Hi, my name is Megan West, and I'm an evening news anchor at Jackson's 16 WAPT. How I got into journalism here in Mississippi is kind of a long story from a girl who's from Laurel, Mississippi. I grew up knowing that I wanted to do this, although at the time I probably didn't know what this was really called. I watched the Today Show, I watched Dateline, I would even sometimes interview friends on the playground. I drew a picture when I was 9 or 10 years old for an art contest of me in a green dress behind an anchor desk doing the news. My parents had it framed and they gave it to me as a gift when I turned 39 years old. But my career really began after I left Laurel and I went off to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. That's where I studied women's studies and I studied journalism. I had my first internship at the NBC station in Washington. And that ultimately led to my first job I luckily got somehow at the Hearst Washington News Bureau. I was hired as a producer there when I was 21 years old. I loved my job until about August of 2005 when Hurricane Katrina hit. I remember I was supposed to fly home to visit my parents the day after the hurricane, and I still thought I'd be able to fly home well into that evening when we finally realized the true scope of the destruction. And it was during that period of time when I was both missing my home and watching other reporters out on the scene telling stories that I discovered how much I wanted to be a reporter out on the scene and really how much I wanted to be back home in Mississippi telling those stories. A little bit about my family. I actually met my husband, Matt, at a going away party for one of my colleagues here at WAPT because everything somehow comes back to my workplace. We met about 16 years ago and we now have a little girl and a little boy, Hartley and Thatcher. They're 7 and 5 years old, my dynamic duo. I think every parent loves their children. Every parent knows their child is a miracle. I especially feel that way because of what we went through to have our daughter and our son. I was very honest with viewers here at 16 WAPT when I first announced my pregnancy that this was not something that happened overnight, that my children were the result of years of infertility treatment. I was nervous about sharing that at the time, but I'm so glad that I did. Even today, I get stopped in the grocery store and I get messages from viewers who themselves or their family members are going through infertility. And it has, I think, changed the way I view my responsibility here at work and given me even more purpose and shown me what this platform can really be, a way to really connect with people. I'll tell you, one of my most memorable moments as a news reporter was very early on in my career. The late and former mayor of Jackson, Frank Melton, had just been booked into the Hinds County Detention Center. He was being released and going somewhere. We didn't know where. And my then news director sent me, his youngest and most inexperienced employee, to the then mayor's home because he didn't think that's where he would go. Of course, that's where he went. And so that's where we found ourselves live on television doing my very first, I think, live interview with the mayor as he got out of jail, just kind of going with it. And I think doing a better job than my news director probably expected that I would be able to do, which kind of bolstered my confidence in this business and also allowed him to give me a few more opportunities. But I'll tell you, the interviews that really stand out most to me are not the big get interviews. It was going into the family, the living room of the Ward family, a family in Jackson whose daughter had been hit and killed in a distracted driving crash. And just a few hours after that happened, they let us come in and talk to them because they felt like it was important for people to hear what had happened and to hear their story. It was a woman we drove up on in Rankin County several years ago. She was an elderly woman and her home had been destroyed by a tornado. We told her story on the news. She was very emotional. And within minutes of that story airing, we were flooded by phone calls of people who wanted to help and ultimately did help that woman rebuild her home. Those are the kinds of stories, the kinds of interviews, I think, that stick with you and remind you of how important this job is. I feel so honored every time somebody agrees to let us tell their story, and I hope that we do it justice. As a news anchor at 16 WAPT, I have the incredible honor of seeing real change happen in the capital city simply by sharing the stories of all the people around me. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. It's about giving a voice to the voiceless. It's about shining a light both on our challenges and on the people who are making our home a better place. And I consider it a privilege to tell those stories every night.